Hello, everyone. This is Meurmishvili. Welcome to Geo-Politicus. This is our weekly English language program with me and Georgi Ktcharava here. I'm based in Washington, D.C. Georgi is joining us from Tbilisi, Georgia. And we'll go over some of the events that have taken place thus far this week. And it's only Wednesday today, 26th of March, and it's already been a very, very busy week so far. So, Georgi, great to see you as always.
Great to
Thanks
see you too.
for being here with me. And let's start with for our region at least, the biggest news, which is the third phase or third round of negotiations that the US has started with the Ukrainians and with the Russians has ended in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. It was about a 3 day long negotiations process, and it ended with an agreement of some sort. So let's dive right into it and tell me what you think about the agreement that was reached. Let just maybe we can just summarize for the viewers what we're
Mm,
yeah.
yeah, first of all, I would like to greet you and our audience and ask our viewers to hit the like and subscribe and stay with us. Yeah, you're right. This is first, I think, very significant agreement as a first step forward, probably in the hopefully peace process that we might see in near future. Um, I would leave the analysis point by point to someone else, but I would like to first raise certain questions because you know we are talking about ceasefire on maritime and opening the maritime routes on the Black Sea, which is kind of a repetition of what was called an agreement in 2024 that was made with the involvement of Turkey
Yes,
when
the grain
Turkey
deal.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, the grain deal. Um, then it was actually, I mean, it was uh, it was Russia that withdrew from this deal at some point in time. But by that time, when Russia withdrew, Ukraine was able to basically keep at bay Russian Navy and assure this security and safety of this maritime corridor that basically um, um, assured the functionality of Black Sea ports or Ukrainian Black Sea ports, which was a great deal at that time. Now, with this agreement, I think we see the renewal of this deal, but Russia gains, I think, uh, in this case more because the sanctions that were under which the, let's say, financial system was before, that assured the trade availability of agricultural produce in the world markets will be lifted, and basically the Russian ports will be reopened after this deal, which was very problematic beforehand because they were under fire from the Ukrainians.
Yeah. Let's kind of sort of dissect that. The White House put out two statements about
Yes, I
the
know that.
negotiations. It was one was a summary of the agreement with the Ukrainians, and the other one was the summary of the agreement with the Russians. Uh, there was no just looking at the statements. I understand the concerns that you're talking about, but looking at the statements, what we basically have is that the U.S. is saying that it will help Russia start the process of doing all that stuff. So there is no commitment per se that U.S. will do certain things. U.S. It's like I think the terminology of it, I think, is important. At least I paid attention to that. That U.S. will help Russia. I don't know if it means anything really significant in diplomatic terms, but it just to me it was very poignant in some ways that it was not a firm commitment from the U.S. to lift sanctions. And I believe since then, President Trump said that the sanctions on Russia are remaining at this point. So we're not talking about immediate lifting of sanctions.
No, we're talking about only one bank,
Yes.
through which this kind of export can be actually processed.
Hmm.
That's true, but this is kind of, for not for me, but for many observers, as I just follow the comments from different sides, including Ukraine and Russia. I think for many this might be seen as a precedent that this can be done. So some sort of sanctions can be lifted before the full scale, let's say, peace process is in place, etc., etc. So, and this is happening at time when actually Vladimir Putin effectively basically rejected the full scale peace, ceasefire proposal from President Trump. That's how it looks like for many.
Hmm.
I'm not debating that. I'm just bringing this, topic for discussion, not for us, but for our viewers, because this is important to understand the rationale behind this kind of step. For me, as I said from the very beginning, U.S. administration made a step forward in order to encourage both sides to follow this process, and then to reach some sort of bigger scale agreements on the general ceasefire along the front line, etc. But there are skeptical views as well, as I said.
Hmm. Yes,
So
and obviously, the Russians are going to try to get as much as possible throughout this process. And there were some assessments by the experts as well as diplomats, former diplomats in the U.S., uh, as well as Europeans, who are saying that this tactics from the Russian side indicates that they are just trying to prolong the time of negotiations.
exactly, yes,
They're not really committed to it. So. I was looking for the text of this particular second point of the agreement with Russia, which says that the United States will help restore Russia's access to the world market for agricultural and fertilizer exports, lower insurance, and enhance access to the ports. So, if you look at that, where the U.S. says that it will help Russia, and you flip to the Ukrainian text, and the second point, which is the only, by the way, only out of those 5 points listed in the White House's statement, point number two is the only one that's different. The rest of them, the
yes,
four
I noticed that as
others,
well. It's
are
interesting.
identical. Yes. So for the Ukrainian one, the White House says the United States and Ukraine agreed that the United States remains committed to helping achieve the exchange of prisoners. So I think this is sort of in diplomatic terms. I think we may be, looking too much into these details. They may not mean anything for that matter, but at
Well,
least remains firmly committed is
I think these are two things that that probably U.S. delegation discussed with Ukrainians, that they will they commit themselves to discuss with Russians the prisoners of war exchange process with between Russia and Ukraine on the
Mhm.
one hand, and on the other hand, because Russia was interested in, you know, let's say, facilitation of restoring the trade uh, of fertilizers and other products from Russia to the world market, and Russia is asking assistance from the side of the United States in that. These
Mhm.
are two issues that were discussed separately on the separate footing with both sides. That's what my reading is, at least.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, that's the hope. Uh,
that's the
it
hope.
could also mean that the U.S. is negotiating separately with Russia and saying, okay, well, we'll help you with this, and negotiating separately with the Ukrainians, saying, okay, well, we'll help you with the kidnapped children,
Yeah,
and U.S. is not sort of cross pollinating these topics between the sides. So we don't know that, unfortunately. We'll have to wait and see how this goes. Um, one Something that came out in the media as the negotiations process was still ongoing was that the last meeting with the Russians lasted for 12 hours,
and yeah,
which
that's
is
too long.
also kind of indicative that Russians are trying to
It's
prolong.
very telling. It's very telling that these negotiations. I think they are very hard and and very not only time consuming, but I think they are very intensive as well
Hmm.
in all sorts of ways.
Yeah. And there is another difference that I think worth pointing out, which is, and so after the 5 points are listed with that one difference that we just talked about, then in the summary paragraph after those points, the Russian statement says the United States reiterated President Donald Trump's imperative that the killing on both sides of the Russia and Ukraine conflict must stop. So it just says the statement just says U.S. reiterated, and then on the Ukrainian statement it says the United States reiterated to both sides, and that both sides is missing from the Russian statement, which I also think that was sort of a uh, after back and forth on the text, that the White House probably had to run by the Ukrainians and the Russians before
Yeah,
putting this out publicly. I would imagine that there was some sort of either pushback or the wish from the Russian side that they would not be put on the same level with the Ukrainians. I don't know what it means, but it's also okay that it jumps at you that on the Ukrainian statement it says that
yeah,
President Trump told both sides as opposed to President Trump just said something. So
yeah.
just again, we can read into it uh, all kinds of different things, but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see what it really means.
Yeah, time will show us what will
Yes,
happen.
that will definitely show us. But you rightly pointed out that this is basically similar to the grain deal that was signed by the Russians and the Ukrainians a year ago.
Yeah,
Was it a year ago or 2 years ago?
yeah. It was actually signed after 2 years of war, so it was
Mhm. Yeah, a
a
year ago.
something.
And then the Russians, pretty much right on the dot after a year, withdrew from the agreement. And
Yeah, they
they
unilaterally
did
withdrew.
not
But
really.
you know what? I also was reading some military reports. I mean, reports prepared by military analysts, because I'm not a military analyst, and uh, they noticed that during this negotiation process in Saudi Arabia, Russians intensify their strikes on Ukraine
Mm,
heavily.
yes.
So this is also kind of reminds me of old Russian tactics that during negotiations they double down on the battlefield their efforts
Yeah.
just to
Yes.
gain more momentum. I
Yes.
think.
Show of force. Yes, for sure.
Yes, so forth.
And one of the attacks on the Sumy region or the city of Sumy
Exactly.
was,
Yeah.
of course, attack on a highly densely populated area of the city. and over 100 people were injured. There were casualties. Children were injured. And there were some cross border attacks from the Ukrainian side as well. And there were some casualties on the
Of
Russian side
course,
as well, but not of the
as it
scale, of
as
course.
it happens, unfortunately, during the war.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So very interesting. We should see. At this point, we don't really know. At least I have not seen anything about when the next round will be held.
I don't know, but as you said, we have to wait and see because this is just the beginning of a very, I think, lengthy process
Yes.
and very interesting. What will be basically the tools, the mechanism to keep the ceasefire intact
Yes.
for a long time, or maybe for longer than 30 days or something like that,
Hmm.
and how it will evolve, uh, and what is next, because it cannot be like a standalone initiative signed for 30 days and that's it, because everybody expectations are very high that after this first step there should be something else following.
Right. That's the whole purpose. At least that's what the White
Exactly.
House is saying, that
Yeah.
this is the beginning step towards a lasting peace.
Exactly. So we should see what, I mean, because if it is the first step and we're looking, I mean, we are waiting for something else to come in nearest future, that has to come very soon as an
Hmm.
initiative, because that has also to be negotiated. And negotiating, as you said, it takes time
Yeah.
from both sides because, like, United States in the middle, and then you have two sides that are in basically in war, and it's difficult. We understand
Yes,
that.
it is difficult, and it seems like Russian demands have not really changed, and the Ukrainians and Europeans are
Exactly.
constantly
Yes.
talking about that.
Yes.
That Russia's plan to um, Russia does not recognize Ukraine as a sovereign, independent country. It calls the democratically elected government of Ukraine a
Yeah, and
regime.
that connected to the opinion that Russia is actually prolonging this negotiation.
Right.
That creates a whole new reality for everybody else to think and understand what is behind this kind of
Hmm.
rationale from Russian side. Do they really want peace,
Hmm.
or
Yes.
they just want to negotiate something in bad faith and then achieve their goals that they were actually declaring beforehand?
Yeah, I think they definitely are prolonging negotiations. Otherwise, they would have just said unconditional
Yeah,
yes to the cessation of or ceasefire, just like the Ukrainians did. Immediately, Ukrainians said that we're ready for unconditional
yeah,
ceasefire for 30 days. Russians have not done it. Um, it's probably, as you said, Russian way or tactics of conducting negotiations, and that's how they are in basically every negotiation process that we've witnessed thus far. There's also an understanding that President Trump understands the weakness of Russian economy, and maybe that's why we're seeing some of the overtures uh, to lift this economic hardship on Russia. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if the sanctions will be lifted. We have no indication at this point that the sanctions will be lifted. They might be or they might not be.
well,
Um,
we have indications but we're not sure.
right.
I think
Yes,
it is not,
that's a
it is
better way
not
of saying
clear
it.
at this point in time. So
Right. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And at some point, if Russia continues, well, maybe it's also connected to this 100-day artificial deadline, basically, that the White House, that President Trump imposed upon himself.
self-imposed, actually.
Self imposed, exactly. And we'll see once we get to that 100-day where, we have a month left. We'll see where we are at that point. Maybe the Russian thinking is that, okay, if Trump is not able to accomplish this or achieve the ceasefire, he may actually get, very angry with the Ukrainians and say, okay, I'm out. I tried, I gave it my best shot, and it did not work. So now I need to move on to different things. Maybe that's one of the things that Russians are thinking about. It would be hard to do that because Ukrainians are basically saying that they agree to the ceasefire. It's the Russians that are constantly adding yes, but, and it's never
Yeah,
for
they are adding conditionalities that are really not directly related to the ceasefire per se.
yes, trying to
They are
get as much.
they're political, and
Hmm.
that no, and we are talking about the military ceasefire, like military hostilities, military operations,
Yeah,
and death of people, as President Trump mentions all the time.
yeah.
So if we want to stop, uh, killing and destruction
You need to stop
from
firing.
both sides, yeah, you need to stop the military action.
Hmm.
So, and
Yeah.
then you have to start the political process. And Russians always put some political demands before they start the negotiations on a technical issue, which is ceasefire. Unfortunately, ceasefire is a or fortunately is a technical issue.
Hmm.
Well, complicated, but still, it's not a political issue.
Yes. Yes, all true. So if Russia procrastinates further, there's also some. There are also some views that President Trump may just turn on his, this friendly relations with Putin and say, "Hey, like you're not working here. You're not playing the way I expected you to play this game. So it's over." Maybe
Of
we'll
course,
see
I
that.
mean, I think every process has limitations, and I think the waiting mood of any side. I'm talking about now White House has also limits. President Trump probably cannot wait forever for
Yes.
goodwill from Kremlin. So they might be a point, and I would agree with you that there might be a point when the President Trump can say enough is enough, guys. Now we will start acting in some
Yes.
way.
Yeah. So very, very, of course, very tense, very stressful times, but also very interesting. After the White House put out the statement, I think we should also sort of talk about the reactions from Moscow and Kiev. Ukrainian defense minister put out a statement on X saying that uh, Ukraine agrees to, as it usually goes to President Trump's leadership to take this initiative and bring the sides together. But he also said that Ukraine agrees to halt of military or to ceasefire on the Black Sea with one condition, which is Russia should not, well, first of all, the commercial ships should not be used for military purposes. That's
Yes,
something that both sides have reiterated. And secondly, if Russia moves its military ships from the eastern sectors of the Black Sea, where Russia had to push the ships out to protect them from the Ukrainian drones,
yeah,
then Ukraine will use the right to self defense and act accordingly, which means that if Russia moves those ships, Ukraine is going to attack those ships. So that's what the Ukrainians said about this agreement. And then Russians, of course, they usually have, like, somebody puts out, White House puts out their 4 paragraph statement, and the Russians come out with 16 or 20 paragraph statements. They always have to say
yeah.
more.
20 pages, probably.
Yeah, and in this case, there was this new, like, very detailed explanation um, connected to this point number 2, which is the assistance to have access to the free navigation in the Black Sea, and Russians were like, okay, when if the sanctions lifted on this, what is it, the a Golhos Bank or something like that,
Yes.
when it when it SWIFT, and the sanctions include SWIFT as well, which is not
Mhm.
controlled by the United States, by the way. SWIFT
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
completely different. The U.S. can put some pressure
No,
on,
U.S. has an influence, of course,
but it's not
but
completely and directly.
yes, it cannot directly act on SWIFT, and yeah, it's not under their jurisdiction, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. So they were requiring that. So it's mm, we'll see, we'll see. But at least one positive thing. So we're not talking only about differences and negative. We have to say that on those 4 points there was an agreement.
There was an agreement,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think when you are talking about the lengthy press release from the Russian side, I think as in previous occasions, and we discussed it a couple of times as well, I think the Russian side basically um, tells their part of the story, and basically they're expressing their
Wish
positions.
list. Yes.
Wish list, yes,
Yes.
exactly. So they're expressing their positions on certain issues, and they're making it in a very much detailed manner so everybody understands around.
Yes, and that's interesting. A very similar thing happened when after the phone call between President Trump and President Putin.
That's what I was referring
Where,
to.
yeah, where literally it was the Russian statement was 3 times longer, talking about the same phone call. And most people say that the reason why it was so long is because not because the sides kind of agreed to certain things during this phone call, but Kremlin felt obliged to say everything that they wanted to say. And actually, the White House did not even, there was a one point in the Kremlin readout that the White House said that they did not talk about that during the phone call. But it was included in the Kremlin readout. So that sort of confirms we're on the same page here that they usually put all these statements which represent the Russian wish lists or demands.
It's an outline of their position on certain issues
Yeah.
that they want everybody else to know.
Yes. That this is the position. Yeah.
Although I would say it's quite an informative paper, always.
Yeah. But nothing new. Usually nothing new in them because you always
But
hear.
as long as it is an official paper, you can read certain, what is thinking behind this paper
Why they are saying
and
it.
why and
Yeah.
so
Very
on.
often when mm, uh, no diplomats that have dealt with Russian negotiations throughout the years, not just Ukraine related, but during the Soviet times, even back then, they would say that you listen to what the Russians say not because you want to hear what they are saying, but you need to understand why they are saying it. So it seems like it's always the
It's a
same.
very wise position, by the
Yeah,
way.
why they are
Very
saying. Yeah,
wise.
yeah. So I feel like we've sort of exhausted this topic of the agreement in Riyadh. We'll see what happens. Maybe by next Wednesday we will have some updates in this regard. Maybe at
Hopefully,
least we'll have
hopefully.
the date and if not the meeting that took place already. Um,
Let's signal the second topic that we have.
yes, which is was it which one was it? The Signal or Armenia?
Signal, of course. That's why
Yeah,
I'm signaling this.
Signal. I honestly, it's I don't even know how to talk about this. I'm very,
Well,
very honest. It's
let's
so
talk how it is, and without anything.
yeah. Well, yeah, it is.
It
I
is
know without
surprising.
giving anything, but
It is shocking in a way, and
mind-blowingly shocking.
exactly, exactly. So
How
I
is
like
this even possible that we are talking about this topic? How was it possible for this to happen? And then how is it possible that instead of assuming responsibility, basically, saying that this is what happened. It was a mistake, and it was admitted. Even Walt said that it was a
Well,
mistake.
it was. I think
But
it
then,
was a mistake on the one hand, but in that kind of reality, when we're talking about high level officials in a security sector, that is called a breach of security.
absolutely, yes. And
And
that's
and
why,
I have two questions. Well, actually, I want to use two words: questioning. What are the consequences, and how the responsibility has to be actually, put on shoulders of those people?
mhm,
Because I am a foreigner, I am not in the United States, but I am a student of international security, and I, it's for me, it's like a unbelievable thing. When I switch on the CNN and see how the director of national security is basically grilled in a Capitol Hill, uh, and questions, like, uh, coming to the director of national security as an avalanche, and there are no answers. That is disturbing.
mhm. Yeah,
I
it
think.
was. So yesterday there was a hearing on the Hill with the intelligence community chiefs, and of course, Director Ratcliffe was there as well. In addition
Who
to,
actually admitted, notwithstanding the silence from the director of national intelligence, he admitted that he was on the chat,
yes,
and she did not. I mean, I'm talking about Ms. Gabbard. She did not acknowledge it publicly that she was on the chat.
yes, but there is a sort of assumption that she was there as well. If not her personally, then somebody from her staff. And today, by the way, I'm sure the viewers may have seen it. Um, the Atlantic decided to publish everything, all the screenshots of the conversation, because yesterday the
That will be a
conversation.
popular issue, by the way. I think
I'm sorry, what?
that will be a popular issue. I,
Yes. Yeah. Um, so yesterday there was a lot of controversy, including on the hearing on the Hill, or at the hearing on the Hill, that there was no classified, there were no war plans disclosed, and it was. The administration or the U.S. intel side was criticizing the journalist.
yeah.
I don't understand for what, but he was included, and he did not push himself into this chat. He was included, and that. But to blame him, I think, was very unexpected to me, and because of that, to respond to that. And to respond to this allegation that the journalist and the publication are lying, that there was no war plans discussed, no secret information was disclosed in this chat. That's why they published it. And it's very telling, and in some cases, very disturbing to, first of all, see that people of this magnitude, influence, impact, attention from all kinds of different intelligence services globally would actually have a signal chat and discuss the national security matters on a signal chat. Um,
You know.
that's I don't know what side you're on. Whoever, whether you are conservative or liberal, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter who you are. The fact that it was discussed on the messaging platform of any sort, which is not,
Yeah,
protected.
we're not talking about the content of it.
Right,
We're,
right. The
we're talking
fact
about the
itself.
fact. Yeah.
Yes. And then the content, of course, was especially the anti-European rhetoric that
Exactly.
uh,
And, that reactions in Europe are very harsh, actually,
well,
because, the um, it's not it's an open secret that the relationship between European allies and the United States for the last month and a half at least are not brilliant or the best ever. There are some
oh, you can
problems
say that.
every yes. There are some problems, and and these the parts of the chart that were revealing attitude towards Europeans and Egyptians for that matter, but I have not read any Egyptian reaction on that from General Sisi at least. But from European side, we already have a reaction. They say basically to summarize that okay, we are just in the very beginning, and we should expect more. And this roller coaster is just starting. I mean, in terms of relationship between European allies and the United States, it's like uh, and I can tell you that this is the best dream of enemies of the United States. To be honest, in different parts
Absolutely,
of the world,
absolutely.
this is just the best day when they learn about all these things. When the first of all the internal security situation in the United States because of this chat were revealed as nothing is safe. Second, the discussions within this circle, whoever they are, related to the allies and extracting some
Economic gains.
economic gains or
Yeah.
whatever, but gains anyway from their allies when nobody was asking for that.
Hmm. Yes, but it also kind of showed the disposition of different members of that team, people on the chat saying
And,
that,
and
well,
I think
it,
I think actually, yeah, to be very honest, I'm not politically motivated in any way in terms of the U.S. politics, but just analyzing the situation when we are talking about next year's elections coming. I mean, into the
you mean
Congress, etc.
midterms? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
midterms
Yeah.
in the United States. This kind of situation that I mean, scandals that we're witnessing right now, they will not play in the hands of the Republican Party, I think, and it will be always remembered by many during the election campaign. And I think those who actually made those mistakes, if we can call them mistakes, they are they are not, um, let's say, good allies of Donald Trump. To be honest,
Yeah. I have a feeling that so it's been what 2 months, 2 months and a week,
I'm often in
into
a
this
and the bit.
yeah, administration. With this was by far this is the biggest national security related scandal, mishap, whatever you want, breach of national security. I have a feeling that we will have other scandals as we get closer to the maybe not
Midterm.
scandals, but issues that would bother the U.S. Voters and would make the enemies of the I don't know of Donald Trump or Republican Party happy or vice versa. So
Stronger, I would say.
what's
Stronger.
stronger? There you go, stronger. Yeah.
Stronger. And
So
you know what? Yeah, I just want to remind ourselves, first of all, you remember when these high level security officials were actually appointed and they went, I mean, to Congress, to the Capitol Hill for improvement, sorry, approvals.
confirmation.
They were, yeah, they were not easily approved, by the way,
Yes,
by
yes.
lawmakers.
There was
They had problems there.
especially talking about the you're probably talking about Tulsi Gabbard, who's the director of national intelligence, and uh,
Yes,
Pete Hegseth as
and
well,
director of FBI as well, I think.
director of FBI. But I think Radcliffe, no, the director of CIA, did not have a
No,
hard time. Marco
yeah,
Rubio, of course, was
no.
very, very. He was confirmed.
Marco Rubio was elected,
And
yeah,
Mike Waltz, who's
by
the
far
national
the
security
well,
advisor, he's not. It's not a confirmed position, so President Trump just appointed him. And after all this, we have to say that there were yesterday. President Trump met with the ambassadors or nominated ambassadors at the White House. Mike Waltz was present at the meeting, and there was a question from the journalists about the scandal about the signal chat. Signal Gate, as some reporters call it. And President Trump stood by him and he said that he's not considering letting Waltz go. And Waltz is sort of in the center of attention because it was he created the Signal group. But he said that it was his staffer who did it, not him directly, because he does not know the journalist. He does not have his numbers.
we should see whether there will be any kind of investigation into the issue, because
I'm sure there will be some sort of congressional, uh,
congressional,
yeah,
yes, that's one thing.
congressional mandate.
Congressional, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that
let's
would
see
be
how it goes.
expected. It's also interesting that some of the Republican supporters, allies of Donald Trump, are questioning this incident as well, because this is a very bad precedent, or the precedent that leaves a very bad taste in many people's minds. Um, so there's, for example, a Republican Congressman Ron Bacon, I think is his name.
Mm.
He's very outspoken about it, and he says, "Well, we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to find out what happened and prevent it in the future." So um, I bet all the signal chats are at this point stopped and
Seized,
seized.
seized.
Yes, especially by the high level administration members. But we'll see how this plays out, what this means down the road in terms of the
We should see, where Signal stands in terms of the market value now.
Yeah, well, I throughout this, that's very interesting. That's a good point. That all of us have, Signal, WhatsApp, or Viber, whatever messengers that we're using, right? And people always somehow assume that Signal is the most secure one of them. And then, as you're reading some of these reports related to this scandal now, people are saying that, well, we know that the Russians and Chinese have hacked into it, or we know that they have broken into it. And that really, I don't have any national secrets that I talk about. I don't have it. Anybody can read
We're common
whatever I'm
people. We are
saying,
not
but
interested.
it was kind of shocking to me to find out, to be honest, that really Signal is not as secure as I thought it was. So interesting. Yeah, definitely a lot of attention to Signal at this point
That's
in the
true.
world. Yeah. And people who did not know about it, I'm sure.
Well, actually, well-deserved attention.
Yes, yes, there you go. Yeah. And Georgi, it's been
Yeah,
45 minutes already.
45 minutes. Yeah,
Time flies when you're having fun. That's
very much
uh,
flies. But
yeah,
we had very good topics to chat about and exchange, opinions, information. I think viewers can be satisfied with this
very good then. Very good. So we'll see what happens about Armenia. We'll talk about Armenia
next
maybe
time. Yeah,
next
for
week,
sure.
yes. But some very interesting things, Armenian, to just since we kind of initially teased it, let's just very briefly say that the Armenian parliament adopted with the second reading, I think, a bill that moves Armenia closer to applying for the EU membership or
Yeah,
becoming leaving the EU.
by this bill, they basically declared their European Union aspirations
Aspirations.
as a
There,
state. Yeah.
yeah, which is very very. It's basically Armenia's pivot from north
To the west.
Russia to the west. We'll see where that goes and what that means, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we will get more reactions from Russia on this as well. So,
Yeah, there are no actual reactions as of now, but there are some experts that are pointing out towards what Peskov said earlier this year in January, when this bill was actually, as a draft, was introduced into the parliament, for discussions. He said that you cannot be, in the process of EU integration and at the same time be the member of Russia-led economic union, I mean customs union that they have.
yeah.
Well, which is true, by the way,
Yes.
and not
Just like
only from the Russian perspective, but also from the EU perspective.
yes. And just like you join something, you can also leave something, right? So, is there some sort of maybe Armenia is moving that direction?
Yes and no, because I mean, 1 minute, uh, there are some different calculations that if if Armenia leaves this custom union with Russia and other post-Soviet countries, uh, Armenia immediately will lose 70 to 80% of its trade,
Hmm.
which is significant, very much so. On the one hand. On the other hand, the price of energy, I mean, electricity, gas supplies, etc., will grow immensely.
Of course, yes.
And that will be an economic shock for Armenia,
It
obviously.
would be
And,
devastating. No,
and then, plus, don't forget that, Armenia has an agreement with Russia to host the Russian bases on the territory of Armenia until 2044.
yes.
So
I don't think Armenia is joining the EU until 2044. So
that's also true.
lots of rounds of negotiations, as I can see. But I think
But
we're
this
finished.
topic is worth of exploring and analyzing. You're right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Turkey comes in, and Georgia and Azerbaijan in this conversation, Iran as well. So, um, yeah, let's definitely talk about this down the road once we actually have more and know more.
Yeah.
But at this point, I appreciate you being here and having this conversation with me. I would like to thank everybody who was watching us. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, subscribe. And this is the English language program, but Dario offers you so much more, like pretty much on any topic you're interested in the Georgian language, however. Or if you're interested in learning Georgian, then join in. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for watching.
And stay with us. Thank you, Ia, for a very nice conversation. Informative and very pleasant.